Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another Friday recommendation here for a film which somehow now is just over 30 years old, yet still holds up, as this video here is for The Crow from 1994. Now, I would figure if you're not familiar with this film, you may at least be familiar with the fact that Brandon Lee died while making this film, Brandon being the son of Bruce Lee. Now, throughout this production, by many, this was seen as his likely, launch into his own name, carrying him into stardom, kind of getting away from the shadow of his father. This was going to be big. This was really going to set him up. There was a lot of excitement around this one, especially from fans of his father or fans of his work in films such as Rapid Fire or Showdown in Little Tokyo. But this video isn't a deep dive into his legacy or what went wrong during, on the set of this film, as there are plenty of videos that go into really great detail. I'll see if I can find one to link to at the end of this one. But as usual, this is simply I like this film for these reasons, maybe you will too. And since this one is an older film, hitting 31 years recently, I think this October perhaps, also going along the lines of, does this one hold up, especially without the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia? Now, for those unfamiliar, the synopsis is as follows. The night before his wedding, musician Eric Draven and his fiancée are brutally murdered by members of a violent gang. On the anniversary of their death, Eric rises from the grave and assumes the mantle of the Crow, a supernatural avenger. Now, as mentioned within the film, in a bit more of a poetic way, from the character Sarah, she states, "People once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes, something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it and the soul can't rest. Then sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back to put the wrong things right." And that's what this film is about here. Revenge. Two lovers taken out in cruel and brutal fashion, one of which, Eric, coming back to seek revenge. One by one, he's tracking down those responsible and taking them out with supernatural powers of regeneration, stealth, speed. This crow giving him kind of remote sight. His revenge is very swift and very brutal indeed. And, within this, we also learn who's kind of behind these killings, what was happening in that neighborhood, this crime lord of sorts, played by Michael Wincott, and his henchman and his girlfriend, played by David Patrick Kelly, Bai Ling, and Tony Todd, among others. So we have that kind of unfolding in the background, the crime happening within the city, what's happening on Devil's Night as half the city's being set ablaze and just crime is going rampant. All that's happening in the background while Eric is kind of sneaking around enacting revenge, as well as we get a lot of these flashbacks, which are both romantic and extremely tragic, because by the time all is said and done, this is just revenge. Nothing about this is leading to being brought back to life and everything being happy, just getting some life for a short time to take revenge. So while justice will be served, we're still kind of left with this tragedy. So having recently rewatched this during a movie night at Speakeasy Lounge, which I have a little bit of footage for here, for which our host Angelina Phoenix, who's behind that indie short cult classic, which I posted a few weeks back, as usual, she dressed up for this, so of course we had to do a little bit of a photo shoot. Next week is going to be Austin Powers films, so I don't think she will look anywhere near as cool, but I'm just kind of guessing for that one. But as for this film, I can say it really does hold up nicely, and this crowd was great because it was mixed crowd of lower 20s to mid 50s, and everybody still really loved this film. There isn't much within it to kind of date it or pull you out of what's happening. Like Proyas's later film, Dark City, he's the director of this one, which I did a video for, and I'm actually going to stitch into this video towards the end of this Crow portion. He used the same cinematographer on both films, so we get this really dark, secluded, dirty feel, late night, dark city kind of feel going on, creating an almost bottle movie of sorts, very self-contained in its own thing, and I think that's why it's kind of timeless. You're not really linking it to too much current day stuff or even what was happening in the 90s. So it feels very standalone and it still works really great. So great that, all of the attempts to kind of squeeze more out of this franchise have pretty much failed. They haven't really done all that well. Now, they do have their fans out there for some of these works, but we had, I think, 3 sequels, 1 season of a TV show, and a reboot. At best, I've heard an installment or 2 were so-so, it seems. Even its latest big-budget remake had a really great cast. It just didn't seem to work. Not that I can comment from experience because I still haven't seen it yet, but it was a remake instead of just another story in the Crow universe, because per the comics, there'll be different characters that get brought back by a Crow to seek revenge and so forth. So when this new version came out and they're using the same character names, that it was that it was an actual remake and not just a restart of the franchise, I don't know, it just kind of came and went without much notice. And I don't know if it was judged harshly due to the reputation and love of the original, or if it was really just a lackluster movie. One of these days I'll probably get around to seeing it for myself, but it feels like for this film it's simply a one-and-done great film about a romantic tragedy turned revenge story. Nostalgia and tragedy of its own aside, it still holds up really well for those who haven't seen it in ages, or for those who have kind of heard mention of it but never got around to finally checking it out, because it is more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out my latest video here for The Crow from 1994. To the time of this video is available on MGM Plus and paid rental. Personally, I would say just scoop it up on physical media. I really feel like those dark scenes really work a lot better on physical media than in streaming. But anyways, that's all I've got for this one. Thanks for coming around and sticking around to the end of this portion, which I'm now going to stitch in that previous video of Dark City. So if you never got around to checking out that video, it's coming up in just a few moments here. Same director and cinematographer. Be sure to like and subscribe at the end, and I will see you in the next one. Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to an entry which is a bit darker than some of the others, a bit slower, a bit more mysterious, which is for the 1998 film Dark City, starring Rufus Sewell, Kiefer Sutherland, and Jennifer Connelly, and it also features Richard O'Brien of Rocky Horror fame. And the synopsis for this strange dark film is as follows. A man struggles with memories of his past, which include a wife he cannot remember and a nightmarish world no one else ever seems to wake up from. So, this is one that I had originally seen in the theater, picked it up on DVD, and now I own the Blu-ray. And I would like to see how this one looks remastered in 4K one day, because first and foremost, this film is wonderfully shot. And yeah, before we even get into the story, let's just get into the overall feel of this. Let's talk about how this film looks, which is dark. But of course, that's the name, Dark City. But the entire time, this story is set at night, well after sundown, in what can be described as kind of a 1950s and film noir inspired city. You have a lot of shadows, a lot of steam and fog, flickering lights, a little rainy, a little green, and very, very calm. It almost lulls one to sleep at how slow and relaxing and sleepy the city is, which is a setting for our story and even the title, Dark City. Now, as for the story itself, as any frequent viewers of mine know, I love a good mystery, and this one really delivers on that, and I think that's why I like it so much. Though some of that mystery it maybe brings across a little bit strong, especially at the beginning, a little bit too mysterious, in that they lay it out very, very thick, and there's a lot of confusion as our lead in this story wakes up in a bathtub, a little blood speck on his head, and having no memory. He's trying to piece together not just what's going on, but who he even is, because he doesn't even know what his name is. So he's gathering information from this hotel clerk, from where he had woken up, about what his name is, and also retrieving a wallet of his from a place where he had dropped it earlier, and they left a message at the hotel, and eventually meeting Kiefer Sutherland's character, who states that apparently he is his doctor, and he has some answers, eventually. Now, throughout this film, we also see these really mysterious figures, of which Richard O'Brien is one of them. They have these shaved heads, they're pale, they're wearing these black coats and hats, and literally, just moving, both walking and floating from place to place, altering the landscape and the settings of various situations and other characters in the storyline, while the city itself and everyone in it is kind of completely passed out, like everything just kind of stops. Like a sudden hypnosis which knocks out everybody and just brings a whole city to a halt. A hypnosis that is actually carried out by these mysterious figures who have these strange powers which allow them to control and manipulate the world around them and the people within it. A power which our lead quickly discovers he can kind of tap into, though he doesn't know what it is, who he is, why he has this power, or really how to use it. Mystery. We got a lot of that in here. Now, we as the audience members don't just have the mystery of who our lead is and seeing him trying to piece everything together, but there's also been some murders in this story, which are being investigated by a detective who's played by William Hurt, who is also in this, and these murders are somehow connected to our lead. So he's trying to figure things out. We got these mysterious figures, we have this doctor, and the detective is looking for whoever is behind these murders. So there's a lot going on in this one, and much of the beginning is kind of confusing on purpose as we slowly let this mystery unfold. But at its heart, it is definitely sci-fi first and foremost, a sci-fi mystery as we get deeper into the story and who these strange figures are. Not to mention the city itself and what this city is. Has anybody even seen daylight before? But as for these strangers, they are really creepy. They kind of shatter and click in a way, and when one is killed, some really strange stuff kind of happens to their body, but it's very in your face as it unfolds very aspects to fill you in. So there are questions, it takes a while to get used to not having those answers, and then they'll very heavy-handedly feed them out to you along the way, though at a kind of slow pace. But every time something is explained, you kind of realize that there's a little bit more that you need. There's still some little bits that you can't quite connect. Stuff about our lead's past, these strange figures, the doctor and his role and everything, and what's going on with these murders and this detective. Needless to say, I want to leave out any spoiler information, but the main points I want to get across as far as why I enjoy this film and why I want to recommend it, rather than just blathering and rambling on is, first off, the visual style is great. This use of darkness and shadows, this overall look with that 50s inspired noir feel, this kind of green tint over everything is really beautiful. Second, of course, my favorite part, I think, is probably the mystery. You know, something really deep with various layers, which starts with nothing but questions, but eventually starts to let everything out. And finally, something I haven't actually touched on yet is the soundtrack. So aside from musical performances, which are led by our lead's wife, played by Jennifer Connelly, who is a singer who is looking for her husband after they had a falling out and he kind of disappeared, we also have this deep, brooding score happening in the background. While also at certain points we will get these more energetic portions as different aspects need to be emphasized and really loud, thriving parts during these more action-oriented scenes. Now, the only warnings I will give on this as to why it may not be for everyone is that it is slow. Now, while this film is only about an hour and 45 minutes, it is paced very slow and sleepy as this world and these characters inhabit, which works really well for the story and the setting and these performances bringing us through this story. And some may not really be into that, but it definitely seems to be intentional that they want you to feel kind of that same repression and that same sleepiness that this whole city is experiencing. Also keep in mind that this Blu-ray here that I have is the director's cut, which is what I had recently watched, and it's been the only version of it that I've watched ever since first getting the DVD back in the day. So there may be some differences a little bit here and there. From what I recall, there were some differences about Jennifer Connelly's character. She may have not had as much screen time. So there may be some differences if you watch the theatrical version. But all in all, this is an often overlooked and borderline forgotten film of the 90s, which in some ways was definitely ahead of its time, and it never seemed to really find the audience that I feel it deserves. Because taking this story, the mystery they build, how they pull us through with a feel which puts us right in the shoes of these characters in the sleepy, dark, film noir feel of a city, it's definitely more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out my latest entry here for Dark City, which at the time of this video is on Tubi, Plex, Canopy, as well as various paid rentals. Like I said, I had this one on Blu-ray for a while, and I am on the lookout to get my hands on a 4K edition of it one day. But at any rate, head on over to one of those services if any of this rambling made sense and made this sound kind of interesting to you, to have something to check out this week. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. Thanks for coming by and for sticking around to the end, as it really does help out quite a bit. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and if you're not already subscribed, be sure to hit that bell icon to get notifications for when I put up new content, which is anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week. At the time of this video, I am trying to up that and keep up with a 3 times a week for a little bit, put some more content out there, mix it up. For those who are new, I usually focus on horror with some 80s throwbacks to films that either I don't really hear much about these days, or I just haven't seen in so long I'm wondering if it aged well. Occasionally I will throw in some other ones from the 90s, or the occasional newer film, which I feel needs some additional attention. And as for those horror ones, there will be some new releases that maybe just dropped on streaming or in the theater, or even going all the way far back into the 50s. but that's the overall feel of things. I always try to do it with no spoilers, giving just enough information to basically say it's not as much a review so much as a recommendation as to why I like something. I'd rather focus on that than ranting about one that I didn't enjoy, much less spend any time editing a video for a film that I didn't enjoy in the first place. I'd leave that for somebody else. Anyways, that's all I have for this one. Again, thanks for coming by, and I will see you in the next one.